So the field of chemical ecology relates to how organisms interact with the world around them. I'm looking specifically at mosquitoes. So it's insect chemical ecology. And for mosquitoes, they mostly interact with the world through their sense of smell, which is the olfactory system. My project is looking at one specific species of mosquitoes called the Culex Pipiens mosquitoes. I won't go into too much detail, but there are two types of the Culex Pipiens. One is called Culex Pipiens. I'm just going to call it Pipiens from now on. That feeds mostly on birds. And there is another one called Culex Pipiens molestus. I'm going to call it molestus. That feeds mainly on humans. They do have some more genetic and behavioral differences, but the feeding patterns are very interesting. And for a long time, they've been separated, living in different habitats in different parts of the world. And my project is looking at how, because of human interaction, changing environments, these two separated types are coming together and forming hybrids that can feed on both humans and birds. The natural problem with this is that they carry diseases from birds to humans, and the Culex Pipiens mosquitoes specifically, they are a disease vector for a disease called the West Nile virus, which is one of the most popular insect-borne diseases. And over the past 10 years across Europe, because my project looks specifically at Europe, the incidence of cases and fatalities for something like the West Nile virus has increased. Why these mosquitoes choose to feed on either birds or humans, we don't quite know. Unlike the Anopheles, which transmits like malaria and Aedes, another very popular species, not much research has been done on Culex Pipiens. So it is my goal to basically study these mosquitoes and ask the question, why do you feed on whoever you choose to feed? Our hypothesis is that we believe there is a genetic component to it, one that we can identify and study more to see whether, if there are any changes, how does that affect the mosquito? Can we use this knowledge to curb the number of cases of West Nile virus? So, where I currently stand, I just started about 6 months ago. I'm still setting up my entire process. So yeah, hopefully in the next 4 years, I find something interesting that can help the world, I guess.
So to an average person or to an outsider, it would be a little confusing as to why you chose mosquitoes. But little do most people know that in fact mosquitoes are the deadliest animal in right now, at least if not in existence.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people die due to diseases related to mosquitoes, like you said, the Anopheles and malaria. It might not be so prevalent in our country or in the developed countries.
The number of fatalities, definitely, yeah. The good thing that I think over the past, 20 so years is more knowledge and awareness has spread about mosquitoes and malaria specifically. I think the Gates Foundation's done a lot of work in Africa to, providing nets, providing knowledge and resources to people to fight these diseases. But yeah, the mosquitoes still remain one of the most dangerous animals out there. So, and of course, because we're going through COVID, I think the fact that now any potential disease is still a specter in everybody's minds. It's an interesting and very promising field of study, definitely. For my undergrad, I sort of went wide in terms of my focus. The good thing about evolutionary biology is that you study sort of the principles and processes that govern a lot of different things, regardless of the nitty-gritties of how each individual behaves. You look at a population rather than an individual. And I went into that because also I didn't really know what I wanted to do. This gave me a good excuse to try out a lot of different things. And for my master's, it was more human cell focused. The human cell is obviously a lot more complex than a lot of microbes. So there are a lot more processes involved, but the same things, the same basic scientific principles still stand. So I guess the best answer I can give you is that the individual organism that I've been studying has changed, but the core principles have always been the same. The biology doesn't change just because you move from a human to a mosquito to an elephant, for example. So Bill Gates was basically going off what other scientists said. So I personally was not surprised. One of the big things you learn about in school, or at least evolutionary biology, one of the first examples that they teach you about adaptation is an old Harvard experiment where they took a bunch of bacteria and they laid out on a plate, and they kind of demarcated areas of increasing concentrations of antibiotics. And there's a time-lapse video, and you can slowly see this small bacteria kind of moving forward, but then dying because it doesn't have the antibiotic resistance. But then one kind of survives, that starts spreading, and then it moves to the next area, but then that dies because the concentration's increased. And slowly by slowly, there is an antibiotic-resistant bacteria that makes its way all the way through. So it's always been an idea that we kind of knew about. Even when Fleming created penicillin, the markets suddenly became flooded with penicillin kind of based drugs, and it was always an issue that this is not a permanent solution. It's always the evolutionary arms race of we have something that works, but something else will survive against it. So we need to create something else that will work. It's never been a surprise as to the fact that there would be some kind of pandemic. We look at the 1910s, where the Spanish flu was the biggest pandemic of the time. We look at some time before that, there were other pandemics, the plague, way back when, that decimated, European civilization. So it was more of a question of when and how would we react. I think what took us by surprise was the manner of which, by it spread so quickly, we underestimated how much humans have been able to travel and spread so quickly. So COVID spreading from China to wherever else in the world was very surprising. We also didn't realize how stupid people are. Like,
I think
you would never expect such a large anti-science population to form so quickly, and it's disheartening to see that. It's disheartening to see people I know kind of say stupid things.
That's again the human mind and its tendency to lean and believe conspiracy theories. And
I think it's a mixture of fear and ignorance, and fear in the obvious sort of thing of, I don't know what this is, and I don't want to change my life so much, so why should I believe that this is there? Ignorance, because I think we've taken science as this sort of, we've kind of put it on a pedestal and idolized it as this, you have to be smart to do science, where you realize that everything in our day-to-day life involves some amount of science. You don't have to be smart, but it just requires a bit of time and understanding to do it. And it's just easier to click like on Facebook and just believe whatever you want. Right. So, yeah.